good evening, folks. It is Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. Can you believe it's 2024? Guess what? It's here. And we're lucky to have as our guest speakers tonight two very knowledgeable, experienced folks from the Texas Film Commission, Steve McCaig and Cassidy Cummings. And interviewing those two, or hosting, is our favorite, beautiful Denise Garza, Corman. So, and she is well prepared. So rather than me trying to do this, I'll turn it over to Denise and y'all because y'all know what's going on. And thank you all for helping. Denise?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Yes, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Cassidy and Stephen. And we also have our core member advisor, Jason from McClaim, joining us today. So I did send, for those of you who haven't been to a mixer before, and even if you have, sometimes we send questions to our guests ahead of time so that they have a heads up of the kind of things that we're curious to know and what we want to ask. So I do have a few questions. I'm going to ask them first. Around halfway through the hour, we'll turn it over for questions from all of you. We'll use the hand raise feature, so please don't write anything in the chat because I'm not going to be looking at the chat. And I don't want to miss anything, but if you want to write down ideas or something like that, then just make sure you ask them at the time by raising your hand. If we don't have anyone speak up with questions, I have more. So we'll get started. Thank you, Cassidy and Stephen, for joining us. Can you each tell us a little bit about how you got started in the industry and what your background is?
Yeah.
Sure.
Cassie, you want to kick it off or should I?
You go first.
Okay. And before I get started, just because I saw the list of questions you sent, and it's a great list of questions, I'm certainly not a subject matter expert in all of them, and this is a line we trot out a lot, but I am, Gary has my email, Denise has my email. Please share that with everyone. If you have any questions that we can't answer, shoot me an email. I will get you in touch with the person who can answer that question for you tomorrow at the earliest. But myself, I have a rather limited production background. I worked on some real bootstrappy independent productions when I was in college at Texas State University, where I studied public relations and creative writing. I did a lot of PA work for, low budget documentaries and short films and things like that, some writing, some directing, but nothing that I would ever really count towards legitimate production experience, more just kind of figured it out as I went. And then after college, sort of bounced around from job to job until I had an opportunity to move out of the country, where I taught English in Spain for a little while, before I got my bearings, came back to Texas, and was lucky enough to know someone who was already working within the office of the governor, who helped me get a job working within the governor's office. And then the second that I saw there was an opening at the Texas Film Commission, I more or less just harassed our deputy director at the time until she gave me an interview. And then I don't know if I impressed them or if I scared them with my passion for Texas film, but I do think that in the end is what helped me get the job at the Film Commission. Now I am a part of our one half of our marketing department at the Film Commission, kind of learning every day as I go. Been doing this since 2019, and I'm still learning a lot every other day or so. But yeah, I mean, more or less, that's the broad strokes of how I got here. Cassidy's story is more interesting than mine, not to set her up too high.
It is. It's
But-
not at all. I was just gonna say Steven's being modest because, direct experience aside or anything, he has a really vast and colorful knowledge of film and appreciation for, and he's always introducing us all to really interesting films. So it's like a continuing education and industry involvement. But I guess this is worth mentioning. When I was younger, I did voiceover work on an anime series in Austin. And I thought that was so cool, even as a kid, to be able to do something like that here and not have to go out to Hollywood or anything. And just loved that and really fell in love with the industry from that point onward. But of course, as we were talking about before the meeting started, I also don't like to be in front of the camera or even hearing my own voice anymore. So I fell in love with writing and ultimately pursued a master's degree in screenwriting, but really wanted to get some on-set experience before that. So I hopped on a local indie film here. It was kind of a rom-com as a locations PA. And that was a really great experience, really a test of my Texas grit, because it's hard work locations and some of the roles. So that was really my main, like, I guess, boots on the ground kind of experience. But if any filmmakers are in on this chat, don't fret. We have my colleague Lee Davis has like a decade of heavy production experience. So we definitely have people on staff who have been, you know, working in the industry for quite a long time.
Yeah, we are not indicative of the experience in the film industry that the rest of the office has. We're hurting the curve more than anything else.
We appreciate your passion for it, though. We need passionate people in that office. So thank you. While the strike was going on, what was the Film Commission doing to secure film business for the state?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from the marketing office perspective in that, you know, a lot of the industry did more or less shut down during the strikes, understandably, given what was going on. But our job in the marketing department, it continued sort of as it has before and after. You know, what we were focusing on maybe changed slightly, but throughout, we continued trying to do what it is we try to do on a regular basis, which is to market the state of Texas as a viable and a you know, a top tier production location. Just trying to keep that in the forefront of everyone's minds when they weren't actively working on something. But you know, even if you're not working, these people they're considering what they're going to do when the strike wraps up. They're thinking about that all the time. We wanted to keep in people's minds that, you know, Texas isn't going anywhere. We are funded, our incentive program is funded to an historic rate. That's not going anywhere because of the strikes. These locations, you know, the geographic diversity that Texas has, which is one of our greatest benefits here. We like to think Texas can double for almost anywhere on the planet or off of it. You know, we've doubled for the moon before. That's not going anywhere. You know, a lot of the things that make Texas really enviable as a production location, we wanted to keep those things in everyone's mind. So we were just trying to, you know, through our social media, through our newsletter, through our Made in Texas series, we were trying to get as much information out there as frequently as we could about, you know, the benefits to filming in Texas, why someone would, or filming in Texas or creating in Texas. You know, if you want to make a video game here, we wanted to continue to let you know why that was a better idea to do that here than any other state in the country. You know, same with film production, television production. While we weren't, you know, actively encouraging anybody to ever, you know, break a strike or anything like that, we just wanted to make sure that information was out there and was easily accessible. You know, that nobody could miss all the good things that we think about Texas in terms of production, that we're trying to make sure everyone is aware of, you know, on a daily basis. That's my rambling answer on that one.
Yeah, I'd say from the incentive standpoint, we encountered a lot of projects who were then in the planning stages, I guess. They were seeking information and just trying to get their ducks in a row, looking forward for any sort of resolution to the strike, you know, having an understanding of the program so that they were ready to go when things resumed.
Yeah. So much of what we do is just making sure people have information, honestly, that it was easy to continue doing that.
Yeah.
Excellent. How quickly are the TV and film projects that were delayed by the strikes coming back together?
We've definitely seen an uptick in inquiries and applications really this month. I actually heard from our production team that she knew of a location scout or something who said it was kind of the busiest month in January that she'd seen. So that's actually great news because we know that people, you know, Texans are being employed and working and finding steady work again. So that's really exciting for us to hear.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten a number of calls and emails just over the last, I mean, what is today, the 10th, over the last week and a half, for people who want to start going pretty quickly. You know, we we get a number of inquiries on a regular basis, like Cassidy said, for assistance with locations, for people trying to post on our job hotline because they want to crew up quickly, typically. People updating their information on our website. I think we've all been really heartened by the amount of interest that we have seen just since the start of the new year.
That's great news. Where could we expect to see the projects come from? Are they coming from other states, or do we have mostly new programming that's starting here? Whatever you guys can divulge. I know some of this is confidential.
Yeah. So the great thing about production in that regard is that it does, I mean, historically, especially in Texas, it comes from all over. We're such a big state that we have a lot of homegrown talent that is always gearing up something within the state. But even outside of that, I don't know if you would be surprised. I was surprised when I started working here at the amount of interest there is internationally in filming in Texas and in creating in Texas. We get inquiries from Europe and Asia and South America on a pretty decent basis for people who, a lot of them want to film documentaries here. They want to film reality TV shows here. But then there's also a real interest in narrative programming, just fiction filmmaking and TV production that people want to do in Texas, mostly because, one of Texas' greatest resources is our culture and our iconography, and that exports really well and easily around the world. I mean, the Hollywood iconography of Texas exports really well. People, you go to Europe, they still think we ride horses and wear Tingan hats a lot of the time. But while that may be a little annoying when you talk to somebody, it really does help in terms of selling Texas as a production location worldwide. And I think, and Cassidy, you can maybe help to confirm or deny this. I mean, we're seeing interest in terms of people who may want to come here or expressing interest in coming here from all corners of the globe, all corners of the state and all corners of, the world, for sure.
Yeah. And both to your question, both I think a lot of new programming and, potentially we'll see some shows coming into Texas that were previously shooting somewhere else, but that's kind of been the case before. But it will be interesting to see with our infusion of funding that was kind of, as Stephen mentioned, historic for us this past for this biennium, the next 2 years. It will be interesting to see if that entices any shows to come here that were previously shooting elsewhere.
Fantastic. And I apologize, I was looking down, somebody was texting me who's trying to get in the meeting. So she's trying to get in. So we're getting her the link to join us. Can you tell us about the new studios and what roles you may have played in their development? How do you think they will affect long-term growth within the state?
Cassie, you want to run point, or I have some thoughts?
Oh, sure, go for it. I haven't,
Well,
I don't know much about the new studios, if I'm being honest. I've been heads down in the incentives program, so.
Yeah, just to begin, full disclosure, neither Cassie nor I, as far as I'm aware, unless you're going to surprise me with this, have had any real hand in the development of any production spaces or studios in the state. We, much like with upcoming projects that we may or may not work with, we can't always speak to who we've had conversations with about these things just for confidentiality reasons. But I will say, we can tell you that there is always interest in our media production development zone program, which is an incentive program we operate to help with the creation of production spaces in Texas. And to your question about, how will the development of new production spaces, I believe it was like impact production in the state or impact production in these areas, up to a point, and we're not near that point right now, I don't think. Up to a point, more production spaces is going to be more useful than detrimental, for the ability for more people to be able to access these production spaces, especially if they're, outside of an area like Austin that does have a decent amount of production spaces already. When you're on the outskirts or outside of Austin, the ability to access those spaces is so beneficial to filmmakers who don't, for whatever reason, live in an area where that already exists. You know, that access to resources and to technology. And maybe I'm an optimist, but I can only sort of believe that it's going to help people and not hinder people in creating things in the state. And that's all we're ever working towards, is trying to help people create stuff in the state. So if this helps them, then as I think it will, then I think we're all for it.
Super. I'm going to jump to this one because we talked a little bit about this when we were talking about the projects, about our unprecedented incentive package that we passed. Do you think that more robust incentives like the ones that we just passed are going to likely be passed in the coming years? I know you don't have a crystal ball to see that, but aside from working with the TXMPA lobby group and the Film Commission, what can we do to keep this type of funding momentum going?
Yeah, great questions. I'm really hopeful that, the success of the program will, encourage more funding in the coming years. And also, historically, the program itself has had an ROI of about, I think, 520% for quite some time. So I think just having that proof of concept from the past, and then now that we have 200 million for the next 2 years, I think that we're going to see really big results on that. And I think results are going to be what speaks the loudest, alongside, as you were saying, any lobbyists and any sort of people working to bring visibility to the program, and also ensure that the program is utilized so that Texans are being hired and working, and that there's more spend in Texas. And we are, part of the Office of the Governor, part of the Economic Development and Tourism Division. So there is a really big emphasis on economic impact, and I'm really hopeful that we'll see some great returns this year. And unfortunately, we're unable to sort of lobby on our behalf, but yeah, any sort of other groups that would like to do so on our behalf and also to keep the program going would be really helpful. I think just any way to bring visibility to the program, if there are any community leaders or anyone in the group tonight, anything that you can do to spread the word to filmmakers so that they can actually utilize the program will be really what helps to keep it going and helps to get more funding in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a community leader, even better. But everyone on this call, the best thing you can do to help out is to reach out to your legislator, who's going to be the people at the end of the day who are making a lot of these decisions. Call them, email them, write them a letter, show up at the Capitol. I mean, if you call our office, I will help you figure out who your legislator is, because it's one of the most important, beneficial things you can do to help out during session. Because like Cassidy says, we are not able to lobby on our own behalf, much as some people might wish that to be so. So we are, to a certain extent, we rely on people outside of our office to help carry that water for us. And on our website, we have an economic impact page specifically relating to the incentive program, the TMIP program, which shows what Cassie's talking about, that the ROI for dollars spent through the program is pretty sizable, pretty substantial stuff. Send that to people, tout that. That's the best you can do. Let people know what's going on and let people know this information, because we're 10 people right now in our office, and we can only spread information as wide as we can. At a certain point, we're going to need people like you who care about this stuff and are in the industry and are benefiting from it. We're going to need you guys to reach out and let your legislators know that this is important to you, and that economically it's a good idea, it's good business. That's what they respond to. Tell them it's good business.
Definitely. While we were talking about that, it reminded me of something else when we were talking about promoting, and then I also have a follow-up question that goes along too with what we said about filmmakers promoting the commission and filmmaking in Texas. I know that y'all do the film friendly cities. How does that help with promoting the program? Because I know that the hometown where I'm from, Alvin, it's a film friendly city. They don't film things often, but they do film things. They have filmed things there. How do y'all encourage those smaller cities around to get certified, or whatever the terminology is, to really promote their areas for people to get excited about filming in Texas and in those cities?
Yeah, well, I mean, the easiest way to, I think that question is threefold, more or less. I'm going to try to shoot at it in a couple different ways. But I think the easiest way to get these communities to promote themselves, to promote their areas as filming locations, is to tout that economic benefit. You know, we have case studies showing the impact of a single television production on a small town. You know, like when The Leftovers came to film a season in Lockhart. You know, we can look at the numbers and see what sort of impact that had on a town the size of Lockhart. And there are several cities that we have certified as film-friendly Texas certified cities that are smaller than Lockhart. You know, if a production of that size happened to come through, it stands to reason that the economic benefit would be even larger. You know, economics is the easiest way to sell anybody on marketing anything. You know, when you show how beneficial this can be, not just for individuals, but for the community at large. You know, when we talk about the film friendly program, we talk often about if a production comes to, you know, say Waco, just to pull a name out of the hat, they're going to, hopefully, we're going to try to encourage them to hire local and to utilize, you know, small businesses. And that in and of itself is really helpful for that area. But then you think like, well, okay, if they're in Waco for 2 weeks, you know, they're going to need to buy gas. They're going to need to have hotel rooms. They're going to need to eat. They're going to need to, you know, spend their time doing something besides working. And all of that is money that's hopefully, you know, in the best case scenario, funneling back into the community. And we always tell these communities that are, you know, they wonder why they should get film friendly certified, is that if you're not set up to handle that kind of production business, then productions they're not going to be inclined to come to your area. So it's only one small thing that we're doing. We think it's really useful, and we can see the impact that it has on these communities before and after they've gone through the process and they've learned more about what it realistically means to host film production in their area. Because, you know, if you don't live in a metro area, it's not unlikely you've never seen a film production come through, and understandably you wouldn't know what all that entails maybe. But once we, you know, let people know that, you can see how it very quickly becomes apparent that they understand that this could be really beneficial to them. You know, it's in their best interest to at least be aware of what it takes, and to be prepared and ready to set that up. I think that answered your question. If not, I'm happy to try again.
I will just add as a little like tiny piggyback on all the great things that Stephen said, is that I hope a lot of small communities are hearing about the program through word of mouth, through other smaller towns that have come through the program, and liaisons, because just seeing people in our office who work on the program, I know that they work really hard to try and give a lot of value to people who are part of the program and give them the resources they need to offer what films need when they come through, and also to really pitch themselves and show themselves in the best light, and identify things that they have to offer that they didn't realize they had to offer. Like we talk a lot about how ugly locations can sometimes be some of the, like a really coveted shooting location. So they teach them how to really showcase all the things that they have that they didn't even realize they had, which is so great. So I hope that there a lot of the places are hearing about it from other successful participants in the program.
Yeah, Cassidy's totally right. You hit the nail on the head. The thing you need to know about Texas towns is that they're very competitive. And when they hear that the towns around them are doing this and have achieved this, I have noticed very definitively it drives the surrounding areas interest-wise. They don't always cross the finish line, but interest goes up for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's important too for those smaller towns, or just the towns that are outside of the big cities, because then when it does come time for the legislative session, people tend to focus on Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. We've got other areas, Corpus Christi, El Paso, and then the smaller towns, Pearland, Sugarland. All of those areas, have legislators to vote on these things as well. And if they're film friendly certified and are trying to get that business, that's more legislators to contact or who would be in favor of supporting it. So I just wanted to ask more about film friendly. So if y'all, any of you out there, if y'all are from the small towns who have film friendly certification, pump that up come legislative time. What are some resources, and y'all started to talk about this, kind of mentioned it. What are some resources that filmmakers here maybe don't know about that could really improve their education, output, inspiration, or just help them get their film made?
Yeah, we are aware. We operate a lot of resources, and we're aware of more. When you said that, the thing, and you wrote it, the thing that initially, when I read your question, that jumped out at me was the education aspect. Because we have a number of resources that we talk about all the time, but one that we partner with and we help to support, but we don't talk about all the time, is the Texas Archive of the Moving Image. If you're not aware of them, they're a really great resource for filmmakers if they are trying to get any sort of archival footage or any sort of, just for lack of a better phrase, old footage, old TV shows or commercials or industrial films. The Texas Archive of the Moving Image they're an organization that will take old videos that you have in almost any format. They will digitize them and send them back to you on a hard drive with the understanding that they're going to hold on to a copy of that in their library as well. And then that library is available to filmmakers to use, in certain capacities. We tout that all the time. It's a great way to get that footage, but it's also a great way to learn, if you're interested, about the state as it once was and what it has become. There's a lot, like we were talking about our office saw the Iron Claw the other day. Most of our office saw the Iron Claw. And we immediately ran to Tammy because we were like, they have to have Von Erich brother footage. There must be that footage on there. There wasn't, unfortunately. If you guys have any, please submit it to Tammy because we would like to watch it and we'd like to let people know it's there so they can use it. But it's a really great resource in that regard. As far as filmmakers are concerned, practically speaking, we always try to tout our Texas production directory. It's really useful for filmmakers and it's really useful for us for a number of reasons. For filmmakers, it is a very quick way to try to find crew people in your area that we have already taken the efforts to vet to a certain extent. Before anyone is allowed to list in that directory, we do have them send us pay stubs and call sheets, supporting documents that will prove that they work in the capacity that they are claiming they work in. We try to keep it as clean as possible in that regard so that no one's ever going to accidentally hire anybody who's not able to do the work that they say they're able to do. And that's a statewide directory. It's a free resource. Anyone with paid credits can list in there, providing they can prove that stuff. And then on our end, it's another thing that individuals can do to help showcase to legislators the size and strength of the crew base here in Texas. We pull from that directory pretty frequently to show, like, look at just the sheer number of crew people who have listed, and know that there are more who haven't listed. So it's not an immediate benefit to filmmakers in that way, but long term, it does help to paint more of a picture for legislators and those who are making decisions about the future of the program in this state. Let them know, how many people are working in this industry, are making a living in this industry, and are working to support this industry that everyone on this call is working to support. Cassie, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I thought of three things. And of course, I'm all about money, money, money from incentives. So I'm thinking about savings. And one thing that came to mind is that Texas Film Commission, the production team, helps with locations. They can actually pull a locations package for you, free of charge, of course. So I was really blown away when I first started working there to realize that we offered that resource to people. And also, something I thought of was that the Texas comptroller, they actually give sales tax exemptions on media or products and services used in media productions, and they have refunds on fuels, off-road fuels used on media production. So that's like generator fuels, which can be a lot of savings for projects. I've heard projects be very excited about that. So definitely, if you have a project, reach out to them. And then we also mentioned two projects that they could potentially reach out to local incentive programs. Certain cities offer that as well, and also may be able to advise as to soft incentives. And even I think our film-friendly liaisons could probably assist with that as well. So I think just being willing to conduct that outreach and see if there's anything available can really help. But yeah, the Texas Comptroller is one that I try to mention a lot because it's just like another avenue for savings.
Fantastic. I have one more question before we open it up to the audience. What are some of the goals that you have set to improve the market here?
Goals that we have set to improve the market here. You know, and again, I can only speak from the perspective that I have as a member of our marketing department. My cohort and I in the marketing department, we talk often about wanting to represent the full breadth of the moving image industries in the state of Texas, so that both those working here in the state and those outside of the state, outside of the country, can see just how varied and diverse the voices coming out of this state are. It's a person who is born and raised in the Panhandle is going to live a very different life than a person born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. Same with, El Paso to Beaumont to the Pine Curtain to anywhere in between. And the artists that are coming out of all of those regions are telling a lot of the time very disparate stories of their own lived existence, lived experience, and they're going to vary quite radically. And we want to make sure we are doing everything in our power to represent the state through the resources that we have and the platform that we have as accurately as we can. Because, all too often in this industry, it can look really homogenous. And we know from traveling around the state and going to festivals and going to workshops and, all that good stuff, we know how diverse the state is. And I don't think without work, it's going to be apparent to everyone. Because the levers are just not always pulled for everyone to have an equal share at the plate, more or less. So that is a goal we have set internally, at least for ourselves, for the past couple of years, and we're not going to deviate from that anytime soon. We're trying to amplify as many different voices as we can, because we think that's important. Yeah.
God, that's such a great answer. Mine's going to be garbage. But I'll say from the incentive standpoint, similarly to kind of having a diversity of perspectives, we do really focus on creating a nice mosaic of different project types, I should say, like video games, commercials, film, TV, virtual reality. There are so many different project types that the program does incentivize, that we try to make sure that there is a healthy project, a healthy balance of those different project types being accepted at any given time. So similar to what Steven said, just not nearly as eloquent at all.
There's a fine line between eloquence and rambling. I'm line of that line.
No, and I will say my personal goal as well is to become more well-versed in digital media and video game projects. I know that there was a question on there about how much that industry is changing, and it's changing quick. And of course, we want to be keeping up with industry changes as well. So that's one of my personal goals, is to learn more about that all the time, and also the different, really innovative companies out there that are doing different things, even if they don't necessarily fit into our program as it is right now. That's something we want to know about and be able to grow to meet.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we have about 25 minutes left, so I want to open up the floor to audience questions. If you have any questions, if you could please raise your hand on the Zoom raise your hand thing. I don't really know how to say it other than that. Gary has a question.
Yeah, I was just curious, either Stephen or Cassie or both, can you give an idea of the range of either cash or cash benefits that go to different projects? Just a ballpark idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really depends on the amount of Texas spend each project has. So the kind of range is a 5% cash grant on that Texas spend, and then up to a 22.5% cash grant on the spend.
I'm glad you brought Cassidy on. She knows those numbers. I'm glad you got her.
The one thing I know, maybe.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate all y'all's insight. We really do. So, folks, feel free to raise your hand and ask a question while the opportunity is before us.
Yes. I saw that a question had popped in the chat from Anne. I can't do the chat while I'm on. So Anne, if you could just ask your question out loud.
I can see the chat. I can read the question.
Oh, yeah.
I have unmuted. Okay. How much of the film incentive goes to the big players? Because we know Richard Linkletter and Rodriguez get a lot of money. Also, probably Matthew. But are there crumbs left over for commercials and so on? How does it split out?
That's a great question. We get that a lot because there are indie projects that come through that are worried about, the funding being swept up by these much larger projects. And like Stephen and I were saying earlier, we really try to ensure that there is a healthy balance of projects coming through. And we actually have a list of paid projects on our website on that economic impact page that Stephen mentioned earlier. And I think that goes to show the different types of projects that we're accepting, and that we do try to be very mindful of supporting indie projects and making sure that we're incentivizing a really healthy variety of project types. Thanks for your question.
Thank you. Anik.
Hey, thank you guys. Great information this evening. I'm just curious. I enjoy doing student films, and do student films qualify for any of the resources that y'all have been talking about?
Yeah, student films they're in a strange little sort of in between zone a lot of the time. What I'll say is this: we are more than happy to work with student films and student filmmakers as much as we are able to do. When it comes to, say, our production directory, typically student films don't qualify, if only because so many of them are not paid credits, and we do require a paid credit for the directory just so that we can keep that a repository of working professionals that can be drawn upon by other working professionals. But for a number of our other resources, we are absolutely willing to work with student filmmakers. I know our production department will put together a locations package free of charge, like as always, for student filmmakers, as long as they fill out that production inquiry form on our website. I know that a lot of times we are more hesitant to put student films up on our job hotline, if only because of, what they are. But as long as they're paid, we'll do that. We put one up today that had a paid opportunity for crew. So yeah, if we are given the opportunity, if we're able to do so and find a way to make it work, we would love to support student productions, because that is such an important step along the way to becoming a professional and working in a professional capacity. But more than that, I would just urge anyone who is a student filmmaker, if there's any on here, or if you know of any, let them know that we're more than happy to jump on a call with them and walk them through whatever we can. So many student filmmakers just have questions about the process that we're happy to try to answer. And if we can't get an answer, like I said at the beginning, we know so many people, and we can try to connect them with the appropriate people to get an answer to that question, if that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. That was a great response. A lot better than no.
We try not to say no if we can.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to say no to the next question. Just watch.
Do we have any more questions? Oh, Gary's got another question.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up. I remember a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken, there was a content thing in the law that might have prevented certain productions for certain reasons. Am I correct about that, or does it still even exist?
We do have for the incentive program, it is pretty like open-ended in terms of the projects that we can accept. It's not that strict in terms of content. We do have like kind of like shooter video games and aliens and stuff coming through. I think the one thing that's sort of written into code is that it can't, you know, really actively portray Texas in a negative light. And again, that's that's the one thing, and it is, I think, on the website and everything too. But I think that's the main content restriction that we have.
Gary, you're muted, but I'm sure whatever you're saying is.
Have they ever pushed that button very much? Content no good, we don't do the movie? Is that?
Do you know, in my time, I haven't seen that happen as far as a project that, you know, was going to be accepted or something like that. We do in the review process, it goes through us and the Economic Development and Tourism Division executives, and then also to Office of the Governor executives. And the script does get read by various parties. So they, I guess, you know, it probably wouldn't be possible to slip by if you had, you know, content portraying Texas negatively. But yeah, I really haven't seen things be too strict about it, but maybe people aren't really trying to sneak that through either.
Thank you. Great answer. Just curious.
We love curious people.
Hey, curiosity is healthy, especially in these crazy times. Everybody's trying to figure out life.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how many folks know this, but I had a near-death experience in '77. Wrote a book about it on a lot of YouTube channels, and I work as a professional psychic. Actually, been doing that my whole life. My acting career was only about 5 years because I've got back problems and couldn't be very effective. But I love the group creativity of films, of art. I was a musician. It was a solo job. And the first time I was working on some movie projects, I just thought, wow, this is neat. A whole bunch of people, not just me listening to me, because I was playing solo as a musician. So to everybody, my thoughts about the future is just, you know, tighten up your seatbelt, smile. There's a lot of stuff going on we can't change, but we can always change the way we look at it. And that's why I like your attitude, Stephen. I was going to ask you, when you negotiated with Mexico, did you speak Spanish to them?
Well, I've never negotiated with Mexico. I've been to Mexico. I've been near Mexico many times. My wife is from McAllen, so I'm actually going down to near Mexico in a couple days. But never negotiated with Mexico. I lived in Spain for a little while, and while I was there, I did speak Spanish. Foreign languages, like anything else, they're kind of like a muscle. If you don't exercise them regularly, they will atrophy. And I promise you, if you put a gun to my head right now, my Spanish it's not going to win me any awards, you know. But
Gotcha. I know I speak Spanish a little bit I learned it in high school. And I speak correct Spanish. And of course, a lot of people speak Tex-Mex. And so I always have to, hable más despacio, por favor, you know, speak slower, you know. So
Yes.
again, my thanks of y'all being with us. Folks, we got a little bit more time. Got some questions. Ask now.
I have more questions if they don't have more questions. So
we have nothing but 16 minutes. We'll answer whatever you got.
we did talk about a little bit about the gaming industry and the future. So can you tell us how you see the gaming industry evolving in the future? And do you think that gaming and film will have a closer relationship than in the past here?
Yeah. One thing that we've already seen happen, and I think this was probably happening pre-COVID, but was probably exacerbated by COVID, is that their video game projects are employing people from all over. It's not necessarily centered in one studio or something anymore where they're all working on the game together. They can hire people from all over the world to work on the project. So that's an interesting change in sort of how the labor is conducted on the video games. And then also, I'm just really excited to see all the tech evolve. This isn't necessarily a game, but in terms of digital media, I remember speaking to a company who was sort of rendering graphics for like a sort of live music event or something. So they kind of prep the graphics and then like rendered live. And I thought that was really cool. And so I'm just trying to keep up with everything that's happening out there. I think it's exciting. And I know that that's definitely a goal of our office, is to really make our digital media resources more robust. And we have a team member working on that now. So it's exciting. And all the time, we are also focused on making the incentive program make sense for video games, because it was very much oriented toward film and TV. We have like start of production dates is an important date for our program. And so we need to always be finding ways to translate that to very unique projects. So, like rotoscoping and all that kind of thing. So it really needs to make sense for everyone so that they can be coming through the program.
Yeah, and I think our office is incredibly optimistic about the future of video game development in Texas. We're already, and have been for a while, we're one of the most more video games are developed here than almost anywhere else in the country. We are a hub for video game development in the United States of America. And I'm not Gary. I have no idea what the future holds for me. I'm just holding on. But I think we all believe that the video game industry is only going to continue to grow and continue to be successful. And to your question about whether or not we see the video game industry and the film industry kind of coming closer together, working more, I certainly hope so. It seems logical that that's the direction we're heading in, so much to the point that myself and I'll be hosting an event at South by Southwest in a couple of months with my colleague, Robert Rodriguez, who is not the filmmaker, by the way. We need to make that very clear. People get are upset when he show up and it's a different Robert Rodriguez, but he's lovely, I promise you. If you talk a lot out of it, he's a very nice guy. But we're going to be hosting an event specifically designed to bring as many different elements of the media production industries in the state of Texas together. We want people who work in film to get in the same room with people who work in video games or work in extended reality, because these are not people who inherently always cross over with one another in their day-to-day life. And we know from experience that they have more in common than they do different. And if they get together and talk, we're pretty confident that they're going to find these similarities and they're going to want to work together. At least that's the bet we're placing by having this event at South by Southwest. You can check in at the end of March and we'll tell you, if that paid off or not, but we're pretty confident that they are going to want to work together.
Excellent. Anik and Aline, I saw that y'all put some questions that popped up. Anik, you want to go first?
Sure, I just don't want to dominate with all the questions. So in conjunction with your talking about video games and such, is there any development for like voiceover as well, since those kind of go hand in glove? Anything specific?
Do you mean related to our program or resources, or just in the industry? Oh, okay. We do have animated projects that come through the program often, and so that has a lot of VO as cast on it, which is cool. I like the animated and digital media projects because I always learn something, and it's always really different than TV and commercials. But let me know if that didn't answer your question.
Oh, that's good.
Well, I'm just checking right now just to see. And it doesn't look like at the moment, as of today, we have a category in our directory for voiceover work, but that's something that I want to bring back to my colleagues and have a discussion about. We're never opposed to adding categories to our directory if it makes sense. And we're not infallible. There's things that we don't think about, they just don't cross our minds for whatever reason. So I'll take that information and I'll bring it back and I'll see, what that looks like. And if that's something we want to add to our directory to try to expand our resources, as much as we're able to do so.
Great. Glad I could help.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Ethan's iPhone What's going on, bud?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how to get out of here.
Live TV.
So a question from Aline and then Debbie.
Okay, so do y'all have a list of businesses that provide some of the more mundane needs for productions, like office space, meeting space, restaurants or bars that are open to mixers, fundraisers, screening space? Because sometimes you don't need a full theater. Sometimes you need just, like a really good sports bar or something like that. Printers, that sort of thing, the stuff that nobody thinks about whenever they're thinking of creating a project, but that's really important to producing a project.
Yeah, that's a great question. A list, just to answer the question you put out there, the answer is no. I told you I was going to say no at some point. But we have the ability to respond to that question through a couple different ways. In our directory, we do have some listings for some of the kind of things you're looking for. Office space is one of those. There's a lot of, it's a directory of crew people, but it's also a directory of support services. And support services is a relatively broad term, and it can encompass a lot of different things. So what I would encourage anyone who is looking for a list like that or looking for those kind of resources is to check our directory to see if that stuff is there. If it's not, and what you're looking for is, say, an office space, or space for like a production office, that is information that our production department oftentimes does have, and they can pull that information together in a similar way that they pull together location information if they're putting up their locations package, because what you're looking for in that instance is location information. When it comes to like more of a case-by-case basis, like what you're talking about, like, well, I need half a theater for this, on this day, or I need an auditorium space. That is information that is so, with a state this size, it's a little unwieldy to try to even, for me to try to comprehend how we would pull that information together and much less keep it updated. But because of our Film Friendly Texas program, we have developed a really robust list of community contacts. And not just people who are in certified communities, but people that have reached out to us and expressed interest in getting certified, but haven't made it happen quite yet for whatever reason. But these people are not, just because they're not certified doesn't mean they're not interested in helping with productions. And we are always so happy to take calls with this question and try to connect you with the people in the communities where you're working who have that institutional knowledge because they live there and they work in those communities, and they know, oh, the Lone Star Theater, they would be happy to rent that out. You just want half the theater. It's not information that we're going to know because we don't live in Waxahachie. But our community contact in Waxahachie, she knows a lot about Waxahachie, and she will be able to tell you exactly what sort of, I maybe being hyperbolic, she'll be able to tell you to a great extent what sort of resources they have in the town. So it's a little bit yes, a little bit no to what you're saying. More yes, in my opinion.
But he got his no in. So.
It's inevitable.
Debbie, you have a question.
Yes, I do. And Stephen, I think you meant Waxahachie, right? I think you were just kidding.
Waxahachie. It's late. I worked a full day.
Yeah, so I have a quick question. I was on your website, and one of the things I have not been able to find, and maybe it's not there, but television shows, films that are taking place, filming productions in Texas. Where is that located where I could see, or anyone could see, a list of what is currently happening in Texas? Or even as that list continues with these applications that are coming in, where do we find that?
Yeah,
That's a good
so
question.
it's a good question. Cassie, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. To the best of my knowledge, at least as far as our office is concerned, we do not keep a running list of programs or productions that are operating in the state of Texas. Partly that's
Publicly available. Yeah,
publicly available. We have some information. We don't have a publicly available list of productions that are currently operating in Texas. Partly that is a confidentiality thing. We're not able to report on every production that reaches out to us. If that's information that they want out there, a lot of times they'll make that publicly known. But also, we are not a regulatory agency. And so there's no requirement for the vast majority of production taking place in the state of Texas to reach out and let us know. We hope they do. We are very happy when they do, and we think it's beneficial for everyone when they do, so we can help out as much as we can. But if an independent production in Bastrop doesn't feel like reaching out to us, we will learn about it whenever somebody tells us, you know? So it's just a little more difficult to keep a list like that publicly available, unfortunately.
Right. Two things
Yeah.
I thought of though is that if you're interested in like historical information about where projects have filmed, I think on that economic impact page, I know we keep pointing to the website, but there's a lot on there. I think there's a heat map with where different projects have filmed around Texas. So that's kind of cool to look at. And then if you just have a general curiosity about maybe what's going on, there are casting calls on our website and the projects have posted those. So that's kind of interesting. Sometimes I check those out. My parents are determined to be extras in something one day, get their faces out there. So sometimes we look at that just out of curiosity.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking, sometimes I have gone online just saying, just for the state of Georgia, we know a lot of production takes place, TV shows, films, so on, in the Atlanta, Georgia area. So if I Google TV shows and production in Atlanta, Georgia, there's something from, for an example, the Georgia Department of Economic Development, and they have this film and television production, and they show a list of running shows that are actively in production. And so I've tried to find that for Texas. And so I'm like, why don't we have anything that tells us like what's currently going on in Texas?
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Georgia is a different kind of animal for sure. They're
Absolutely.
living in a different world over there. Yeah, no, I mean, this is a question we get not infrequently. People do want that. It just hasn't been something that we have found a good way of doing, given some of the hurdles that we have to jump through as a state agency. I don't know, based off the organization you referenced, what their association is necessarily with like the government of Georgia, or if they are a government agency, or if it's a CVB or something like that. And unfortunately, it's not something that we have been able to do to this point. But you know, like I said earlier, and like I say on the phone all the time, you know, if that's information you're reaching out about, it's something that I want to seriously consider and take in and figure out how we can do better. So I can't promise you we're going to make a list like that, but I will promise you that I will go and bring that information to my coworkers and see what we can do to try to help.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for that question, Debbie. Do we have any other questions on the floor? We have 2 minutes left, so I can ask one quick fun question for Stephen and Cassidy to answer. Maybe it's fun. What is your favorite film shot in Texas?
Ooh.
You know, this is how we end all of our interviews for people who want to work at the office, interns too. It's a lot more intimidating when you're on the other side of the table. Because you have to
Or
define.
TV show, or miniseries.
Oh, okay.
No, it'll be a movie. It'll be a movie. I'm quite partial to Blood Simple, the Coen brothers movie.
I was gonna say that one.
It's great. I mean, it's like any day of the week, it's going to be a different answer. Today it's Blood Simple. I'm sticking with that one. Yeah.
Dang it.
Good luck.
Steven took mine. I was also gonna say Blood Simple.
Get your
Although
own.
Rushmore is pretty cool too. So
Yeah.
I'm torn. Those are probably mine.
Your favorite is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right?
I what?
Your favorite is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yeah?
That one's a bit gory for me. Great film. But yeah, I'm a baby.
She works near enough to the marketing office. She's had to overhear us talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre too many times, I'm sure.
Well, thank y'all very much. Great information, great discussion. Thank you for answering the questions as honestly as you could. And I'm excited for the future of film work in Texas, film, TV, video games, voiceover. the whole industry. I think we've got a lot to look forward to. So thank y'all for your support.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you
So
both.
much.
Yeah.
It's a great
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you think we could be of use in any way. We'll do our best. And if we can't, like I said, we'll get you in touch with people who can be of use. That's we want to help.
Absolutely. Thanks for all the great questions across the board. Really, really honored to be here and grateful for everyone's time too.
Yeah, and thank you.
for your time.
Have y'all back again. So thank you.
Thanks for
Denise?
hosting, Denise.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank
you.
you for hosting. Denise
Thank
did
you.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks for the
Cassidy,
questions, Jason.
Stephen, thank you for your input, really. Cassidy, Stephen, Denise, attendees, welcome to 2024. Let's make it beautiful. Y'all for sure done your part so far. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.